To Debby. The storm currently riding around this ridge of high pressure. It is forecast to become a Category 1 hurricane as it makes landfall along the Big Bend region of Florida. Here's a look at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, moving through Jacksonville, bringing very heavy rain there. Here at home, just an increase in cloud cover. As the storm makes its way into South Georgia, it will bring torrential, heavy downpours to Jacksonville, Savannah, Tybee, into Charleston. Here at home tomorrow afternoon and early evening, just a few isolated showers and thunderstorms. We're going to be on the backside of this. On the backside of storms, the left side, you get sinking air. So that's going to keep us primarily dry. The coast will be a completely different story. Places like Savannah expected to pick up over a foot of rain this week. As we head into late week, the storm is going to stay stalled along the coast. However, there's some uncertainty. The GFS wants to bring this a little further inland. The Euro wants to carry this up the coastline. Regardless of what happens with this storm, whether it wobbles inland or not, we are not expecting any kind of tropical storm force conditions as this storm stays in the southeast. So a few showers and breezy Monday. Late week remains uncertain. We could pick up about 3 inches of rain if the GFS plays out. But again, no tropical storm force conditions expected. We will stay in the upper 80s to low 90s all week with at least a small chance for showers and thunderstorms every afternoon. A slightly higher coverage of rain as again, that storm could potentially start to wobble back inland late week and into the start of next weekend. Something we'll be tracking for you.